Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes Thunderstorm Edition.
Yes, we are having quite a bit of weather here tonight, and
Mhm.
Courtney has these giant, lovely windows behind her that are looking kind of terrifying. So she told me I
Yeah.
am in charge of being on tornado watch behind her, so I can give her a heads up. So hopefully she can get somewhere safely. And maybe this is the lost Caffeinated Crimes episode, or maybe this is the episode that really just makes us go viral because we'll have video content of the tornado hitting, and it'll all come together if we're still alive to do that.
Yeah, I was trying to let that thunder roll out before I started talking.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I'll try to, if there's like thunder, like re-say what I'm saying. But if it starts raining again, I can't do much. So maybe it'll be like a little bit of ASMR while you're listening to your murder podcast. I don't
That's
really know.
true.
But
Yeah, I hear like a low rumble here right now, but it's not like the loud. Okay, of course it just picked up as soon as I said that. I also told Courtney right before we started, I was like, I can't tell if it's like raining super hard or if that's hail because it was like very like ping ping distinct
mhm.
sounding. So again, you may just have some great sound effects in this episode. And if you are annoyed by them, sorry, this is
See you next week.
yep.
Yeah, but I'm already just seeing lightning in here, and you know
Yeah.
what? This is a little bit of a longer episode, of course, too. So let's all cross our fingers I don't lose power. And then if
Yes.
I do, you'll never hear this intro anyway.
Yeah.
So say lovey.
Exactly. All right. So I think that's good for an intro because we just need to dive in and hopefully we can get this done. But we do have one update this week, which is also kind of funny because I was reviewing these notes earlier today and I was like, Courtney, how have I not heard of this until I literally saw this in our notes? And I don't know, Courtney saw it everywhere apparently, but I did not. And I'm sure you guys have seen it, especially at this point. But Ted Kaczynski, more commonly known as the Unabomber, was found unresponsive in his cell on June 10th around 12:30 a.m. So he was transported to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead. He was 81 years old, and he had been moved to a different facility in December of 2021 because of poor health. But apparently, it is being reported now that he did die by suicide. So maybe he was just ready to kind of push that process along if he was already sick.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
the
saw
Unabomber's
an
dead, which is
updated
wild.
article that said he had cancer. So I think that's why he was
Mm-hmm.
moved, because he was like late stages cancer. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe he just got to a point where he was like, I got not a lot less more going for me. I'm going to be here. And
Yeah.
I'm sure he's not getting great health care in prison. So, you
Yeah,
know,
a lot of people get compassionate release in circumstances like that, but I don't think that applies to the Unabomber. I don't think you're going to get
mm-mm,
anything there. So
no, and I don't think you deserve it.
not at all. Not at all. But yeah, so he is dead now.
The end.
All right, that was a great story. Okay.
Just the way you said it, it just sounded like the end of a book or something.
And the end.
We're going to go ahead and get into this episode. And I just want to give like a quick trigger warning before we start. There is some discussion of rape. So just kind of prepare yourself for that. There's also a murder, because this is a murder podcast. I know we get comments like that a lot of, why are you giving a trigger warning on a murder podcast? But some people just can't listen to that. So I just want to
Mhm.
give a heads up that there are some discussions of rape in this episode.
Yes.
And our sources are Murder in the Yoga Store by Peter Ross Range, thecrimewire.com, NBCWashington.com, Investigation Discovery article, and a WJLA article as well. So on March 12th, 2011, Rachel Ortelli, sorry, I've only seen it written, so I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Anyway, she arrived at the Lululemon store that she managed in Bethesda, Maryland, just before 8 a.m. So I'm sure everyone has heard of Lululemon, but it is a Canadian chain that sells expensive yoga-inspired sportswear. So they sell leggings, sports bra, other workout gear, pretty high price tag, but they are highly spoken of. I think they have like a lifetime warranty on like all of their leggings.
Yeah, they are super popular. But I am glad that you gave a little description there because I can say for sure that my dad, who listens to this podcast, would have no idea what Lululemon is. So I think he appreciates that little description at the
Mhm.
beginning so that he's not very confused.
Yeah, and I'm sure we have other like male listeners who are like, I have no
Yes.
idea what that is. And honestly, you should just make it a drinking game at this point of how many times we're going to say Lululemon because it's a lot.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I sure will. I would just, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Do I have to? Okay. My bad.
Jacqueline's blackout by the time she gets to her first speaking spot.
Exactly.
So Rachel lived across the street, so she walked over to the store and she was shocked that the door was unlocked. So Jayna Murray, who was supposed to be closing, they were close friends and she's known to be like really reliable. So Rachel's just upset, like how could she forget and just overlook locking the door? Like what's going on here? And she was just kind of annoyed because you're not thinking the worst. But as soon as she walked into the store, she just kind of had a feeling something wasn't right. So a table had been moved and a mannequin had fallen over. A TV was crashed on the floor. Garments were scattered all around, like not your typical scene here. And walking around the table, Rachel saw blood on the floor and bloody footprints. And she thought she heard a low moaning coming from the back. So she kind of just froze and like ran out of the store because, you don't really know what you're walking into when clearly stuff is everywhere, blood's on the floor. It's best to just get out.
Yeah. Like you have to think about your own safety in that moment and like let me get myself somewhere safe before asking for help.
Yeah. And next to the Lululemon was a brand new Apple store. So many people were waiting outside in line because a new iPad had like come out. So people were waiting in line. Like the store opened at 10 a.m., but people are already lined up to be like the first to get it. And one customer waiting outside, Ryan Haw, offered to go back in with her and explored more of the store than Rachel had. And so he just kind of like walks in, yells out like, is anyone there? What's going on? And so Ryan saw a half open door and went towards it. And he noticed it was being blocked by a human body that he thought was a man. And so he reached down and kind of like pushed on it, but there was no reaction. So he was about to leave because he's like, yeah, I got to get out of here too. And when he passed by the bathrooms, he saw someone lying on the floor and she was surrounded by debris and blood spatter. She had cuts on her hands, arms, upper chest, and forehead. And she was also bound with zip ties. Her eyes were closed, but Ryan could see her chest moving. And he noticed her yoga pants had also been ripped open at the crotch. So clearly we have a very bad scene here. So Ryan runs back out, tells Rachel, like, it's time to call 911. This isn't just like a robbery or something. It's time to call 911.
Yeah.
So within minutes, Montgomery County police were there. And when officers went into the store, they could tell that the body by the door was not a man, but it was a woman. And she was laying face down and a toolbox had actually like fallen across her. Like the toolbox had fallen and all the tools were just kind of like splayed out. And he could see her pants and underwear had been cut, exposing her butt. And he felt for a pulse, but didn't find one. And this did end up being Jayna Murray. So Jayna Murray was 30 years old and hadn't come home last night. And she lived in Arlington and she had a cat. So her best friend, Marissa Connaughton, lived on another floor of the apartments and was kind of getting worried about where she could be. Like, again, as we said, Jayna was known to be responsible and she would never come back without like feeding her cat or like, even if she was going to go somewhere else, she's going to make sure her cat's taken care of.
Yeah.
So Jayna was very dynamic. She was a positive person. She loved to take risks and have fun. She was actually training for a marathon and she would frequently do cartwheels and handstands at the Lululemon. So she's the life of a party. She's an adventurer and she came from a really tight-knit family with two brothers. For her 30th birthday a few months earlier, she'd actually gone bungee jumping. And that's because she'd actually already been skydiving. So she was like, I got to do something else. Like she's done quite a bit.
Yeah.
She wanted to visit every continent and she was only missing Antarctica. She was blunt and honest without being rude. She loved dancing, but she wasn't necessarily like built like a typical ballerina. And she did have dreams of Broadway, but once she realized kind of like how cruel and short-lived like the career could be, she decided to get a degree in international education and business and communications. So she graduated from George Washington University in 2003, and she was currently working on 2 master's degrees, one in business administration and one in communications from Johns Hopkins University. And in March 2011, she was actually only about 10 weeks away from completing both of them. So Jayna had gotten her job at Lululemon while getting her degrees. She was able to work her schedule like around her classes, and she just loved their like positive mantras, what they stood for. She'd started actually studying Lululemon in her business classes, and it was actually a professor who encouraged her to get a job there because she was like, go work there to get more experience because you're so interested in it.
Yeah.
And she actually wrote her thesis on Lululemon. So getting the best source she can by being an employee there. So
yeah, absolutely.
When she graduated in May, she planned on driving to Seattle to be with her boyfriend, Fraser Bosell, and she hoped to join Lululemon's top management team at the Vancouver headquarters, which was just about 2.5 hours from Seattle. So that was her plan once she graduated. And Marissa, her friend who lived in the same apartment complex, felt something was wrong on March 12th because she was supposed to meet her, but she never showed up. So she kind of had a feeling something was wrong. At the same time, everything happening at the store was kind of being revealed. And so back at the Lululemon store, police cut off the zip ties on the woman who was still alive and had been bound at her ankles and wrists, and she was quickly rushed to the hospital. And this ended up being 28-year-old Brittany Norwood. So Brittany was a smaller woman, only about 5'2" or 5'3", so a bit shorter. She was a former soccer player, and she was very fit. She once even won an impromptu push-up contest with a customer in the store. So sounds like kind of a fun place to work, honestly.
Right? It really does.
She'd played soccer on scholarship at Stony Brook University on Long Island, and she usually fit in well with her teammates. She liked working out, yoga, and taking fitness classes, very similar to Jayna, and I'm sure most of the Lululemon employees.
Yeah, so it explains why you would look for a job at somewhere like Lululemon.
Mm-hmm. And Brittany had 4 brothers and 4 sisters, and she was known to be a good salesperson and fit in well with all of her coworkers. She was always laughing, smiling. But she did seem to have pretty expensive taste, which, some people do. She liked for her clothes to always be sharp. She liked going to a few of the more expensive restaurants around the area. So some of especially her coworkers were like, how are you affording this luxurious lifestyle on the $12 an hour Lululemon job? But that's just how it goes sometimes, it's just how it goes. So
sometimes you do be living above your means, what happens?
Yeah. It is, when you see people on Facebook going to Disney World 6 times a year, and you're like, how? I'm trying to afford my one vacation.
Right? I'm like, I don't understand here, but I mean, you do you figured it out somehow, so you just keep going, I guess.
Go as many times as you want. I'm not judging, but I know how expensive it is.
Yes.
And Brittany was a neat freak and liked everything to be a certain way. And she was actually in the process of becoming a personal trainer. So a friend and former coworker had just gotten a job personal training at a luxury gym near the Lululemon and encouraged Brittany to apply for a spot that had opened up. And Brittany had her first interview 2 days before the attack and had already been scheduled to have a second interview at this location. But Brittany was now in the hospital with a lot of injuries. So in addition to the cuts of her face, chest, and arm, she also had a really nasty slice in between the web between her thumb and forefinger, which makes me cringe thinking about it because it's such a sensitive spot.
Yeah, the face I made, as you were reading that, I was like, ugh, that is.
Yeah, that's a rough one. So cops sent officers to the hospital to see if they could talk to Brittany, figure out what happened. So Detective Dana Mackey sat with Brittany to listen to what happened. So Brittany told her that she and Jayna had closed up and left Lululemon at 9:45 p.m. So Jayna headed for her car and Brittany was headed for the Metro subway. A few minutes later, Brittany realized she'd forgotten her wallet, which had her Metro card in it. So she obviously can't get home. So She called Jayna to see if she could return to the store since Jayna had the keys. And once they were inside, they searched for about 10 minutes but couldn't find it. So Jayna actually offered Brittany her Metro card so that she could get home. And as the two women started to the front door, two men jumped them. They were dressed completely in black and had masks covering their faces. One of the men hit Jayna in the back of her head, and another man sprang out behind a clothing rack and hit Brittany in the head, dragged her around by her hair, and cut her with a sharp object all over her body. She said the men were saying misogynistic and racist comments at her, and she said one of the men then pushed her down into the bathroom and raped her with his penis. She said he then continued afterwards to rape her with a wooden clothes hanger and just kept attacking her. Like, very, very brutal, very just can't even imagine, horrific.
Yeah.
So Brittany and Jayna were both screaming. Brittany said she could hear the sounds from the adjacent Apple store. She tried to fight her attacker, and he demanded her show him how to open the cash registers and safes. Brittany said she could also at this time hear the other man assaulting Jayna. And she said she kept yelling and fighting, but he kept hitting her. She said she could hear it all, but she couldn't do anything to help her. And she said the attacker pulled Jayna into the rear hallway and just kept beating her until her screams gradually stopped. So Brittany cried while telling Detective Mackey what happened. She said she tried to aid Jayna and escape, but she just was like pulled back by her attacker, like pulled back into the attack. Brittany could see all the blood. And eventually Brittany asked Detective Mackey how Jayna was. And Mackey kind of dodged these questions because Detective Mackey herself hadn't been to the store. So she didn't like fully know, but they also didn't want to like upset her more by being like, Jayna also did not survive. So Detective Mackey tried to get her to describe her attackers. Brittany said one was really tall, over 6 feet. The other was quite short, barely taller than Brittany. Both were medium build. And Brittany said she was not sure about their race since they were both like wearing masks and gloves, but based on their voices, she would guess white.
So back at the scene, officers are evaluating the store, and they see bloody footprints from what looks like men and women's shoes, broken vases, and box cutters. Just outside the bathroom, they see the wooden clothes hanger that was used to rape Brittany. They also saw Brittany's bag where she had dropped it, and clumps of blonde hair where Brittany said Jayna had been dragged by her hair to the back. Forensics came in to map the scene, take pictures, and bag evidence. And in the back room, Jayna's laptop and a wallet were lying in plain sight, and everything was where Brittany had said it was. So word quickly spread around Bethesda about the attack, and obviously people are worried and very scared. It honestly just sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. Like, this doesn't like happen here, and like something like this vicious, you know? And other stores around the Lululemon were trying to find ways to keep their employees safe while closing up. So Bethesda is right outside of Washington, D.C., but it is very much suburbia. It has a very low crime rate. 79% of their residents have college degrees, and 50% have graduate or higher degrees, which is like very, very high.
Yeah, extreme. 79% of residents having college degrees. Like, that's insane.
Like, I think it might be different. I think the country as a whole is like 30-something%. And I think masters are like around 10%, but that may not be accurate. Courtney's going to do some real-time fact checking.
Okay, I'm not muted. I was like, can people hear me? So this is from Wikipedia, but it's just the first thing that pops up. So we're just going with it. So for ages 25 and over, in just the United States, bachelor's degree, 34.98%. Says specifically ages 25 to 30 is 36.98%. I don't really know why it's talking about that specific age range. Yeah. But for a master's degree, 13%. So
wow. Yeah.
As you can see.
Yeah. So 79% and 50%. So obviously a very well-educated, very affluent area. The crimes they typically have are usually like robberies, car break-ins, not violent crimes like this. And Jayna's murder was actually one of the two there in 2011, and there was only one murder in 2012. So because of this, police received more than 300 tips in like the first few days in regards to this attack. There was also a reward money of $136,000, and $125,000 of that was donated by Lululemon's founder, Chip Wilson. Lululemon's CEO, Christine Day, flew out to Washington, D.C. She set up group therapy options for the other Lululemon employees, and she also flew Jayna's parents in from Houston and organized a dinner for them and 100 Lululemon employees from 5 surrounding stores. So a lot of the tips didn't have much weight to them, just people calling in like anytime they saw someone. And one common trend with tips was people calling in tips in regards to 2 Black men, not 2 men dressed in black. It had never been claimed in the media that the attackers were 2 Black men. The police even said in their conference that their race was unknown, but people kept sending in tips of seeing 2 Black men walking. Maybe they're getting the Black men confused with the men dressed in black. Or maybe they're just assuming that they're Black men because this country is racist.
Maybe they have a little bit of racist tendencies.
Yeah. But I'm sure the dressed in black too could have, and then they just took that assumption.
Yeah, just kind of like morphed it together in their brain.
So Jayna's body was taken to Baltimore for an autopsy by the Maryland State Medical Examiner, Dr. Mary Ripple. So just going to give a warning here that this is pretty graphic. It was a very brutal attack. We are going to go over the extent of those injuries here if you feel the need to skip forward a few times. So Dr. Ripple found that Jayna had 232 blunt force trauma injuries and 99 sharp force trauma injuries. And 100 of them were on her head and 39 on her face. The top of her skull was cracked in 8 places. Her neck and chin were bruised by a rough rope, and even her legs had contusions. On the back of Jayna's head were 37 wounds. There was also a deep gouge on the lower right of her skull, a 3.5-inch stab, and a 3.5-inch stab directly into the cerebellum of her brain. So this is likely the wound that killed Jayna. So all of those leading up to this one.
Yeah. Horrific.
Yeah. Just absolutely horrific. In all, there were 331 separately identifiable wounds on Jayna's body. And this was a conservative count because so many of them are like overlapping. So it's hard to tell, like, is this 1 or 2? And Dr. Ripple's autopsy report was 26 single-spaced pages with 37 photographs. And Jayna's wounds really helped tell her story because she clearly fought very hard for her life. Dr. Ripple found 105 defensive wounds in her hands and forearms, and even more shocking, Jayna did live through the first 330 wounds. So it was that last knife wound to her skull that killed her. So she has survived up until that point with those 330 wounds all over her body, a lot on her head and face.
Like, just think about how many that is. Like, it's just an absurd number of how many.
Yeah, like, and we'll get into this later, but like the amount of time it takes to like attack someone that viciously, like over and over and over.
Yeah.
So all of the other wounds did show bleeding and bruising that can only occur when a person like has blood pressure, when their heart's still beating. So that's how we know that she did survive up until this last point. And from the nature of the injuries and the blood on tools at the store, it was clear that Jayna had been attacked by at least 5 weapons, possibly as many as 10. So they did include a hammer, a wrench, a straight-edged box cutter, a wheeled box cutter, a metal peg that was used to hold up mannequins, a steel rod called a merchandise peg for hanging clothes, maybe a razor, and finally a rope. So the attackers are just using like everything in this store to brutally go after her. And the final stab wound came from a long serrated knife that the Lululemon employees used to trim fresh flowers for the sales floor. So the knife usually hung over the sink in the back room, 15 feet and 2 doors away from where Jayna had been found dead. So cops also began to look at the Apple store that, remember, was right next door. They actually shared a wall with Lululemon, and it's a very like busy store, very large staff. Again, this is like right outside of Washington, D.C., very popular area. The Apple store also had indoor and outdoor cameras as well as security guards, and Lululemon did not have any security cameras at this time. Apple's outdoor camera overlooked the store's rear entrance beside a parking lot right next to Lululemon's rear entrance. So looking over it, investigators don't really see anything of interest at first, just a lot of pedestrians coming and going, getting to their cars. But then they see 2 men walk past the rear of the Apple store coming in the direction of the Lululemon. So they were walking quickly and they were dressed in black. One wore a black knit cap that could could be pulled down, like a mask, and it was also carrying a black backpack. So they're like, okay, could this be the attackers? It did fit well with Brittany's story, and they did walk by almost exactly 1 hour after Brittany said that they had re-entered the Lululemon store. So the timing kind of would line up with these people leaving. So now investigators are focusing on identifying these two men, but you couldn't see their faces. So okay, this is going to be difficult. So to find the two men, detectives started asking other stores for surveillance videos, tips, anything unusual that they may have seen. And during this, they do get some interesting news, and they find out that 2 Apple employees actually heard the attack as it was happening. So after 10 p.m., Apple manager Jayna Murray and the other managers were tallying up the day's receipts, and she began hearing unusual sounds from the wall that they shared with Lululemon. So she approached, and Jayna said she heard a combination of thuds, screamed, agonized breathing. She said it sounded like something heavy being hit and dragged, as well as grunting, thudding, squealing, all kinds of noises. So she asked her senior manager, Ricardo Rios, to come over and listen as well. He also heard this and the heavy panting, and they both heard 2 female voices, one saying, "Talk to me, tell me what's going on, why won't you tell me?" and another voice saying, "Stop, oh God, please help me, God." So things with the attack started to slow down after that. They still heard some grunting and a few screams, but no words. And Jayna and Ricardo walked away from the wall, and Jayna asked what they should do, and Ricardo just dismissed it as some drama. What kind of drama do you have
women
in your
on
life?
their period,
right?
What
do you think is happening? So Apple's indoor cameras show that the managers noticed the noises at 10:10 p.m. and they stopped hearing anything at 10:19 p.m. So there's 9 full minutes of them hearing all of this going on where they could have done something and did not. They did not call 911. They didn't go over and investigate themselves. They didn't ask one of Apple's security guards who work at the store to go over there. Nothing. For 9 minutes. This isn't I feel we hear this sometimes oh, I heard a single scream and then nothing else, so I went back to bed, whatever. That feels very different than 9 full minutes of what is clearly some kind of attack going on.
Yeah. And it's just how do you not just be let me go check or something? I don't know if this is also the bystander effect where it's
yeah,
they're oh, well, if something's happening, someone will also call, or just not caring. But it's come on. Especially because Jayna was should we do something? And she's gaslit by her boss being nah, it's fine. It's what?
It's just some Lululemon drama over there. What? So besides this revelation, they didn't get many more leads. Most of the merchants didn't have outdoor cameras, but they did get something from a popular hardware store. So a manager had noticed something unusual the morning of the crime. So it involves someone who is going by Kevin Lowry in the book and in this episode. That is an alias. So he was a neighborhood hangout and nuisance. I fucked this up last time too. So he was a neighborhood hangout and nuisance. God. I'm just gonna leave this shit in, y'all. I cannot say this word. Nuisance.
A neighborhood hangout and nuisance.
Why is there an I? Okay. The I is completely unnecessary. Okay. Perfect example of one of those words that you've read so many times but haven't heard or said, and that's not right.
So there's just some words you just can't say. It's just not going to come out.
Okay. So on Friday, the day of the murder, this manager at the hardware store had noticed Kevin, again, alias, who is Black, walking towards the Lululemon store with 2 white men. Did you hear that?
I heard that, yeah.
I'm just leaving that in. This was very perfect timing. We're just going to roll with it. So the store manager hadn't seen him with these guys before, and Kevin was carrying a black backpack. So detectives remember that one of the men in the security footage had a black backpack, but Brittany had said that the attackers sounded like white men. So now we have 2 white men placed in the area. So maybe Kevin played a part as well. Maybe he was a lookout or something. So police started to investigate Kevin. He would frequently hang out about a block from the Lululemon. He could be belligerent and aggressive, especially towards women. He normally went to a bar at a local restaurant, but was not there the day of the attack or the day after. He did have a pretty long criminal record, including assault with a gun, reckless endangerment, and many other charges. He actually had an old warrant outstanding for his arrest for furnishing alcohol to a minor. And police learned that Kevin was treated in a local hospital for bloody wounds to his head, but this hospital was 8 miles away in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And there was a hospital only 1.5 miles away. So why was he wounded, and why did he go so far to get treatment instead of going to the hospital that was closer?
Yeah, so police go to interview him at the hospital, and he said he was assaulted on Saturday night in a club by a man wearing dreadlocks. So he then also said the man was hanging around a social service agency and robbing people on the streets. And he said the guy hung out with another man who was wanted for murder. And he said he even saw the two men attack a woman at the Lululemon. And he's just like telling all these like big stories, basically. So at this point, they're like, okay, is Kevin a suspect? Is he a witness, or is he just a storyteller at this point? Like, we don't even know, but he is not reliable, whichever one he is.
Yeah.
So either way, they just really weren't feeling like Kevin was the man they were looking for. They just like didn't feel like they had enough to just like go on there. And so police held a press conference asking the public to help them find the two men Brittany described. So Brittany had been able to go home from the hospital the day after the attack. She went to the townhouse she shared with her sister, Marissa Norwood. And on Monday, March 14th, detectives drove to her home to talk with her further. So she retold the story and added a few more details. Like, the story was the same. It was just a few more details. She said now her attacker was wearing a hoodie over his ski mask. His voice sounded like he was in his mid-20s, and he smelled of cigarettes. She said they were definitely white and laughed a lot during the attack. She said she tried to escape out the back door, and her attacker pulled her on top of Jayna's body. And he said this was all Brittany's fault. And he said the only reason she wasn't in Jayna's position was because she was, quote, more fun to fuck. And she was crying and shaking while retelling this horrific act, because it's just horrible.
Yeah.
All of that. Like, forensics had found a pair of large men's sneakers stashed on a rack in the store, and its sole tread matched perfectly one set of bloody footprints that was tracked around the store. So they thought the attacker maybe left their shoes behind, but what was weird was the shoes had like blood on like the tops of their shoes, but the soles were clean. So the bottom of the shoe was clean, and there were no laces on the shoes. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
why are these shoe prints everywhere? Why are the soles clean? What's happening?
So something sketchy going on here.
Yeah. Were they Skechers? Anyway, that was horrible. I'm so sorry. So detectives asked Brittany about this, and she said they were used for men to wear while measuring for alterations, because Lululemon also does have men's clothing as well, and that the shoes belong to the store. So Brittany also told them the attacker knew her name and where she lived. She said one of the men must have dug into her bag and found a bill that had her name and address, so they knew exactly where to find her. So once detectives left, they're like a little stumped, especially by these men's shoes found. Like, why did the attacker bring like shoes to the store? Why do the shoes belong to the store and not the intruder? And why did the sole tread match perfectly? Like, what? These shoes are just like throwing a big like question mark in everyone's head.
Yep.
And after detectives left Brittany's house, they were grappling with a lot of questions and things that didn't fully add up. The two men only used weapons that were in the store. So they come to rob this store and attack these women empty-handed, which felt odd. Like, who goes to rob somewhere with no weapon?
And you have no idea what things are or are not available in this place. So like, if you're just banking on, oh, there will be something there I can use. Okay.
Especially, I mean, it's not like you're attacking a hardware store where you're like, I'll pick up a hammer as soon as I walk in. Like, I'll pick up this pair of leggings. It'll help me.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of odd. Another thing that didn't fully add up was Brittany's injuries. Like, how were her injuries just so superficial, but Jayna's were really deep and massive? Brittany had only required a few stitches. Most were already healing. As we said, she came home from the hospital within a day. So very not as badly like wounded. And the detective felt like the men stayed around to just like mind fuck Brittany. And like, how are they just so cool, calm, and collected to just stay around and just mess with her? Like, what kind of like evil mastermind is this that they're just staying around just to mess with her and not kill her?
Yeah, especially when Jayna was attacked and killed so brutally. Like, that doesn't really add up.
So Detective Dimitri Rubin started to wonder if this story was made up. He was like, if you're going to make up someone evil, what are they going to do? They're going to rape you. They're going to rob you. They're going to kill. They're going to be racist. It's like you're creating the most evil person in the world, almost like a movie character. And he was like, maybe we could find one person like this, but two people that are this evil in Bethesda, Maryland, like it just felt a little far-fetched to him about the description about these two attackers. And especially with just how like cool and collected they were and weren't scared, like anything like that.
Yeah, it's not adding up. And there's not many like partner killers like this. You know, like there are a handful, obviously, but it's not common to like commit crimes of this level with another person, like especially with like the violent like rape and nature of these crimes. It's not
and
typical.
To leave one of the people still alive. Not
Yes.
So Detective Rubin was a young detective, so he didn't want to seem to be like too crazy because he's like, I don't have as much experience, but he was just getting this gut feeling that like he's really just starting to doubt like all of this, like lining up with Brittany's story. He's like, something is not right. So he decided to tell all the detectives his theory to see what they say. And the other detectives are just shocked. And they're like, no, that's not possible. That can't be possible. Like, you can't be telling this. But they did decide to start looking at the photos of Brittany with a more skeptical eye. They were like, okay, well, let's see if there's like any evidence that we can line up with her not telling the truth. So they looked at the photos of her in the Lululemon with her hands bound and her hands above her head. And they noticed the way she was bound and the way she was laying, she could have easily crawled to use the store phone or her own cell phone. So she could have easily kind of like, she wasn't bound in a way where she could not move. She could have possibly gotten help. And the photos of her in the hospital and her wounds, again, very superficial. And Sergeant Wittenberger, who's like Detective Rubin's like boss, basically, noticed that these look similar to self-inflicted wounds that he'd seen in the past. They're all only skin deep. They're cut in straight parallel lines, which is indication of self-inflicted. However, Brittany did have wounds on her back as well. So they're like, well, how would she do that? So the detectives tried to see themselves, like if they could theoretically like make these wounds, like if I put my arm back here, could I do this? And they're like, okay, we can, but it would all be kind of in an upward motion. They looked and Brittany's wounds did tail upward as well. So now they're like, heavy breathing.
Yeah.
So further studying the images, they noticed that Brittany's thigh injuries did not line up with the like cuts on her pants. So the thigh cuts would have been made like with the pants down versus her pants on, which is contrary to what Brittany said. So like same with like her top as well. Like she had injuries on her breasts, but no damage was on the top she was wearing. So they were like, so unless you were like naked when this happened, this isn't lining up.
Yeah.
They also examined Brittany's rape kit, and there was like no tears or damages, and her vagina was relatively undamaged. So this doesn't really mean like a rape did not occur, but when she's saying she was assaulted with a clothes hanger, the lack of damage would be surprising. So like if she had just said like he raped me with his penis, they're like, that could happen. But like assault with a clothes hanger is like brutal, and there would be obvious like signs of trauma and damage from that type of attack.
Exactly.
So the Lululemon was still being evaluated forensically. So they expected to find 4 pairs of shoe prints because 2 attackers, 2 women, but they only found 2. So one matched Brittany's 7.5 New Balance sneakers and the size 14 Reeboks without laces found on the shoe rack. So they also found that anytime the shoe prints overlapped, the men's shoe print was always on top of the woman's shoe print. So if it's a struggle, you'd kind of expect them to like alternate overlapping. Like you're not like following her, you're attacking, so they're going to overlap.
It's not going to be so perfect of like every single time in the same way. Like it's going to be kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Especially with how much we know that Jayna fought back for her life.
Yeah. And with Brittany's story of being like all over the store and her attackers pulling her and pulling her over here, it's like, well, it's not, why would the men's shoe print always be over your shoe print? So it did appear that the men's shoe prints were made after the women's shoe prints. And the men's shoe prints also circled the store, went to a sink in the back room, and stopped in front of a chair. And they never left that room, and they never left the building, which is odd because an attacker comes in, I guess barefoot, puts on these shoes, attacks, takes the shoes off, and leaves. Because Brittany is saying these shoes belong to the store. So barefoot the whole time. Don't know why the shoes are so important for this attacker. So while all these, speculations, doubts on Brittany are kind of occurring, police find Jayna's 2-door Pontiac G5, and it was found parked 3 blocks away in a lot she never used. Blood was found on the car's stick shift, steering wheel, and inside door buttons, and the DNA was primarily Brittany's with traces of Jayna's. And in the backseat, they found a Lululemon cap stained with blood, and the blood was Brittany's. So we know Brittany was in Jayna's car, 100%. So investigators have suspicion of Brittany, but they really only have like circumstantial evidence. And detectives called Brittany's sister to ask Brittany to come in to give hair and fingerprint samples for DNA, quote, elimination purposes. So they're just trying to get her back in, basically. So they led Brittany into an interview room that was wired with audio and video, and the technicians for the samples were, quote, delayed. So again, they're just trying to talk to her, basically.
Yep.
So Detective Drury, it's going to be a hard one to say. Detective Drury asked how she was, and then Detective Rubin came in. So they asked Brittany if she'd ever seen Jayna's car, and she said she saw it once, but she didn't know the make or model. So they asked if Jayna had ever given her a ride home, and she said no. So now they've caught her in a lie because her DNA was in the car. So she's like, I've seen her car. I don't know what kind of car it was. I've never been in it. And they're like, okay, thank you. So they asked her to tell the story again, and she tells it exactly as she told the first 2 accounts. And Detective Drury asked if she had a boyfriend or anything, because they would need elimination DNA from him as well for her rape kit. She said she'd not had sex the week before, and there would be no semen. The attacker raped her quickly, and a clothes hanger would have no semen. So she was like, shouldn't be a problem. There should be no semen. But there was semen found in her rape kit that was less than a week old. So, and a few other Lululemon employees also said she'd told them about a former college basketball player she met in the store and had sex with him just 2 days before the attack. So here she is lying again. And why would she lie about this detail?
Especially this detail that can be proven otherwise, because they have your rape kit.
And in your mind, you're only there for elimination purposes. And now they're just like, look, we don't really care about your sex life, but we will need, from a boyfriend or anything. And she's like, no, it's not going to be there. And it's like, what? So, however, detectives still only have circumstantial evidence when Brittany offers to come back to the police station. So she left after that, and they're like, how do we get her back in here? Because we've caught her in all these lies. And then she just calls and she's like, I need to come back in. And they're like, perfect. That sounds great. So she comes back in and she says she did not tell them everything. She said in their last conversation, she hadn't been honest about Jayna's car. She said that not only had she been in it, but she actually drove it on the night of the attack because the attackers made her do it.
Well, it all is falling into place now.
Makes
Sorry
sense.
for doubting you.
Yep. She said prior to the rape and zip tying, they had her move Jayna's car. And she said they didn't give her any reason why. They just wanted her to. And so detectives are like, why didn't you just keep going when you were in the car? Like, because she's saying like she was alone in the car. So it's like, why didn't you just go? Why didn't you just drive away? But she said she was scared for her life since they knew where she lived. She even said she passed people on the street, but no one noticed anything about her, even though she would have been like covered in blood at this point. I mean, it is probably nighttime, but I mean, she's still covered in blood and walking past people. So she was telling the story of her attack again with emotion, going through the details. And anytime Detective Drury like tried to push her on things, she would say like, do you know how many times they hit me in the head? Just kind of being like, reminding them of the trauma she'd been through. So she was like, how dare you ask me that? Like, do you not know like what happened to me? And eventually he said to her like that she must have had a hard few days. Was there anything she would like to get off her chest? And she said she'd been telling the truth. So he tried to press more and asked why she killed Jayna, but she said she didn't. And he kept trying to push in different ways to get her to confess, but she didn't say anything.
So they read Brittany her Miranda rights and then brought her brother Chris and sister Marissa into the room. So the detectives told them like all the evidence against her and how they believed that Brittany had killed Jayna. So Chris and Marissa just didn't want to believe it. Marissa had to be taken from the room because she was very emotional. And eventually Chris asked to be alone with Brittany for a minute, and Drury and Reuven left the room. So Chris asked Brittany if she did it. And so after pressing some, she did say that she did it. Here in the police station with her brother. So Chris was trying to understand like why she did it and what her motive was, but Brittany wasn't forthcoming. And obviously their whole conversation was recorded in this room, and Chris started trying to come up with a plan of defense, either that Brittany was temporarily insane or that it was self-defense, but neither were great plans because like obviously she had covered up the story. So at this point it's like that none of those are going to work really well.
Yeah. And so it was funny too, like in the book, it was talking about how she kept being like, should we be talking about this? And he's like, no. I looked around the room. There's nothing. There's no cameras. There's no recording devices. Like they said at one point
in the book. Yeah.
He like looked at something and it was like, he was like, no, like whatever. And he was like literally looking straight into a camera and didn't know it. Like,
I'm like, you are in a police station. Like
you're being filmed every second. How many times do we see this? I'm not trying to like help criminals out, but in the police station, they're always recording you. Always recording you.
Like, and this is 2011. It's not like this is like the 80s where it's like new technology and you're like, oh no, I don't see any. Like, no.
At this point, we all know police have two-way mirrors. You know someone is sitting on the other side. Like, just was not thinking at all.
Dumb.
And but it's funny because she kept being like, are you sure? Are you sure? And he's like, I promise. I looked around. We're good. They were not good.
No. So Brittany told Chris that she forgot her wallet and asked to come back to the store. And she said that Jayna thought she was shoplifting, but she wasn't. And he told her that she needed to get better at lying to the police. I'm like, what?
Yeah, he's like, you keep looking up whenever you say something. He was like, you shouldn't. They just know what you're doing.
What is with this brother? I cannot.
I mean, props to him because he's just trying to protect his sister, but also like I get it. Like it's your sister. You're going to do anything to protect them. But like, my man, you need to think better.
Some questionable decisions here. So at 1:54 p.m., 1 week after Jayna's murder, Brittany was arrested for her murder. So the arrest ran on the evening news and obviously left Bethesda stunned. And at this time, Jayna's friends and family gathered in Houston to say goodbye to Jayna. Chip Wilson and Christine Day from Lululemon also attended. And the Murrays got the phone call that an arrest had been made on their way to the ceremony chapel. The Murrays and everyone attending were just shocked that it was Brittany. Like nobody had any idea that this was how it was going to turn out.
Yeah.
So Brittany's trial started on October 26, 2011, and the prosecution decided to go for first-degree murder. So they were saying that this was a premeditated decision to kill her, but the defense was trying to go with the angle that she did not premeditate, but in fact lost control. So they were trying to make Brittany seem mentally unstable without flat out saying insanity. So her attorney had hinted at an insanity defense before trial, but there wasn't enough evidence of clinically insane behavior to support it. But the defense's admission that Brittany killed Jayna was a partial game changer. So the prosecution no longer had to prove that she committed murder, but that she committed premeditated murder. So the prosecution detailed the brutal attack on Jayna and how it started in the back room, likely with Jayna being taken off guard. Brittany chased Jayna and eventually cornered her in a hallway, and the attack was excessive. To inflict this many wounds would take a very long time. And during the trial, a judge actually sat at home and banged his hand down 331 times because he's like, this is I need to see how long this took. So he just sat down and banged his fist the number of times that Jayna had been wounded, and it took him 8 minutes. But if each blow had taken 3 seconds, which is more likely because when you're attacking a physical person who is fighting back, it's a lot different than just banging your fist, but just that motion 331 times took 8 minutes. But for each blow to take 3 seconds, it would take 16 minutes and likely even longer because multiple weapons were used. So that's not accounting for the time of switching out weapons. So this is a very, very long period of time to stop and reconsider, and really just points toward the premeditation here, that this isn't just a quick lost control and oops, this is going on and on and on.
This isn't we got into an argument, I pulled out a gun, I shoot you in the head. This was a long attack, and Jayna did not die until that last stab wound to the head. So at any point you could have stopped and been maybe I shouldn't do this. Or at any point I'm why are you attacking her so brutally?
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah. So after Brittany killed Jayna, she started to fabricate the crime scene. She decided to move the car, and then she came back to the store and soaked her shoes in Jayna's blood and stomped around the store. Then she came back for the men's Reeboks and did the same thing. Brittany then washed the shoes and put them up, and then Brittany started throwing around merchandise to make it look like a robbery and a fight, and she then made the cuts to her own body and zip tied her wrists and ankles. They think that she tightened the wrist one with her teeth, which was demonstrated to be very easily done, and she then laid down and pretended to black out. So many wondered in hindsight how police didn't see all along that Brittany was lying, but they did have those 2 men on surveillance video. Her story was also very compelling and just so extraordinary that they wouldn't expect someone to lie about this. You found this person with this body. She is also injured. She is tied up. At first glance, you're not thinking that this is anything other than what it looks like.
Yeah, she's emotional telling this story. She's... And granted, it was only a week between the murder and the arrest.
Yeah.
And this was a big crime scene they had to look into. So it's not this went on for months and they didn't figure it out.
Yeah. Brittany also expressed concern for Jayna. So another reason that they were not initially drawn to her as a suspect, but she may have gotten away with it if it hadn't been for leaving the men's sneakers in the store and also moving Jayna's car. So if those two things hadn't happened, maybe at some point they would have realized that her wounds were a lot more superficial than Jayna's, but those were the 2 things that caught their attention and caused them to look into the other things.
And I think too, you find her in this way, you never want to believe someone would do that to themselves to make up this story. You never want to be oh, here is my victim, let me say they're lying. You never want to be like that, and just...
And we can't overlook the fact that Jayna was brutally attacked and Brittany's a woman. So they're not going to automatically think that.
And Jayna was 5'7", I think, significantly taller and weighed more than Brittany. She was mostly she was very muscular. In pictures you see she's toned muscular. So they're how does 5'2", 5'3" Brittany, who's 40 pounds lighter than Jayna, how would they attack? And a lot of people just don't believe women could attack like that. But also the size difference. They're how could Jayna have not overtaken taken her. And I think it is because of the surprise attack and then taken off guard. But yeah.
Yeah. So the trial lasted 6 days before the judge sent the jury to deliberate. The jurors did not take long to decide and found Brittany Norwood guilty of premeditated first-degree murder. So sentencing took place in January of 2012, and the judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and he said that between every blow, she had the chance to think about what she was doing and did not stop. He also went on to criticize the Apple employees who heard the attack and did nothing. Like we said, like a very long time period that they heard this and chose to do nothing.
Yeah.
And in the years after Jayna's murder, Brittany's motive slowly has come to light. So the days before she murdered Jayna, Brittany had been being watched by the other employees and being suspected of stealing their personal possessions and cash. And if they caught her in the act, she would be fired. 2 days before the attack, Brittany's stealing had been the subject of a meeting of the Bethesda leadership team that included Jayna. And some of the girls also knew that Brittany had been suspected of stealing stuff at the Lululemon in Georgetown, and she had been fired from Georgetown for exceeding the staff discount limit on clothing purchases, but was rehired after she challenged it and transferred to Bethesda. But Lululemon's headquarters said they had to have concrete proof to justify dismissal and that Lululemon didn't have security cameras at the specific store. So the leadership team was discussing a plan to plant a hidden camera. And on that Friday evening shift with Jayna, which was supposed to include more staffers, but they were shorthanded that night, Jayna caught Brittany shoplifting a pair of yoga pants. And Jayna told Brittany that she would have to tell Rachel. Jayna had called Rachel and another staffer to let them know shortly before she was murdered, and Jayna had called on her way to the car. About 20 minutes later, she received the call from Brittany saying that she had left her wallet, so Jayna came back to let her in, and that is when Brittany murdered Jayna. However, the jurors did not know all of this because there were rules banning evidence of unrelated crimes, so they weren't allowed to know about her shoplifting, and the phone call to Rachel was considered hearsay, but now at least we have somewhat of a motive, although a ridiculous one, but we have a motive at this point.
Yeah. And so there was supposed to be I think one more person working that night. And Jayna was also not supposed to be working that night at all. She'd switched with another staffer because that girl wanted off, which that poor girl too, who's like, only I'd worked my shift, or if only we'd had that third person there, not their fault at all, fully Brittany's fault. Because who kills over shoplifting and being caught shoplifting? But
a lot of Brittany's teammates at Stony Brook also said she had a tendency to steal. They said that she was almost like a dual personality, that one would be sweet and funny, and then all of a sudden would be the other personality that was stealing money from them. And once a teammate caught Brittany going through her purse, and Brittany became very defensive. She was yelling at her, asking her what she was talking about, called her crazy. She was eventually kicked off of the soccer team because of her behavior, and she never received her college degree. A hairdresser in Washington, D.C. blogged about how Brittany had ordered expensive imported hair for a full weave, but when it came time to pay, Brittany said the money she brought with her to pay had been stolen from her wallet. She also had a few charges for failure to pay rent, failing to pay a speeding ticket, and unpaid student loans. She had broken up with her boyfriend after a rocky relationship, and she would punch him, push him, throw things at him. And after they separated, Brittany continued calling and even stalking him and his new girlfriend. And eventually she invaded their home. She still had the keys and knew the alarm code. So she just went on in. And the girlfriend said that Brittany stole things from the house as well. And both the ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend said they felt threatened and feared for their safety. So a temporary restraining order was served on Brittany, and she signed it. But within 2 weeks, she violated it. The couple saw Brittany watching them from her car in the alley behind the man's office. And when they left, Brittany followed them. So they called the police and filed an additional complaint, and Brittany was then ordered to a contempt hearing, which was postponed twice. Finally, in May of 2008, an arrest warrant was issued for Brittany, but it was never served. And the D.C. Superior Court said that such orders are not executed by the police unless another complaint is filed. Just what is the fucking point of it then? What?
Yeah, I really don't understand that. Unless they just have so many that they're we can't serve them all, or I don't know. I'm what in the world? What a weird thing.
Yeah, we have to wait for you to complain a second time before we'll actually do something about it. But probably not tell you that that's what it is. So you probably think it's going to be served, and then it's not.
Yeah.
So another detail that was not revealed at trial was based on messages found in Brittany's cell phone. They believe that it was possible she was engaging in sex work even while she was working at the Lululemon. They also discovered a posting on Craigslist offering Brittany's personal services, quote. Also, when forensic experts at the scene found 2 subway cards, one was registered to Jayna and the other was to a sex work counseling group. So the sex work doesn't really indicate or predict behavior like this, or anything like her other stalking or whatever, but just another tidbit about Brittany here.
Yeah, because I know if we didn't include it, someone would be like, well, why didn't you include this part?
Yes. So just want to say we are not saying anything about sex work in general, just this specific piece of shit. So the Lululemon eventually reopened in June of 2011, and they put in a stained glass window that says love in her honor. And the Lululemon store actually ended up moving locations in December of 2017, and they gifted Jayna's brother the stained glass window to have in her honor. And that is the horrific murder of Jayna Murray.
Yeah, this one is just, I don't know. It's so mind-blowing and how brutal it is over nothing.
Yeah.
Literally over shoplifting $100 pair of yoga pants, which I guess I get to Brittany, that's crap, I might not get my job or whatever, but to be I'm gonna murder her.
Yeah, murdering someone because you might get fired. Just to me, this woman was going to murder someone in her life no matter what. I don't know what the situation would have been if it wasn't this one, but I fully believe that this person was already a killer and this was just a thing that pushed her over the edge, but it just makes absolutely no fucking sense. Again, you feel so bad for the person who switched shifts with Jayna because she wasn't even supposed to be there. And if Jayna hadn't confronted Brittany that night about the shoplifting, would it have been, it's so many things that it's if something had been different, would it not have ended this way? But like we said, someone of Brittany's size and a female, let's be honest, attacking someone that viciously, it's unheard of. 331 times. And the amount of time that it was consistently attacking, it's not
yeah.
It's really hard to wrap your brain around.
Yeah. And it's just the story she was telling. And every time they were she was emotional and she was crying. And in the hospital, she was how is Jayna? Is Jayna okay? Seeming very, very concerned, really selling this story. It wasn't her just being yeah, they came in, they attacked us. I don't know, whatever. Fully they were it's almost like she was reliving it every time she told it, and it was the same story every time, which is also kind of just being well, how, if she's making it up, how does she remember all these details and stuff? And it's just it's a rough one.
And even though her wounds were so superficial, it's still a hard thing to do that to yourself so many times. So I'm did she really think she was going to get away with this? She's going all in, I got to do whatever I got to do to get away with this. And maybe she would have if it wasn't for some of her mistakes, Yeah,
I think it was if she would have probably thrown away those shoes and left Jayna's car where it was. And I also feel maybe if she had not come back to the police department to be I forgot to tell you some details, because it's that I think that was confirming all the red flags they were already seeing. But really the shoes are what triggered in Detective Reuben's head what in the world? And you can read it in the book. I didn't include too many of what she was saying that the attackers were saying, because one, I knew it was all bullshit. And two, it was very misogynistic, very racist, very, very harsh comments that I just didn't really want to say on here. But to just be so extreme too, to be I got to stay alive because they said I was, quote, more fun to fuck. That's why they didn't kill me yet. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for that to happen.
Yeah. But yeah, our awkward transition of now that we're finished telling you about this horrific murder. Slightly positive news. I don't want to jinx it, but I think we're going to make it through this episode. I was a little nervous there for a minute because things were too quiet. And I was like, are we like in the middle of this? But
well, there is like 2 little tracks coming. So we have a little break between the next push, I think.
Shit.
So.
I need to hurry and let my dogs out then. So anyway, so Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is this book I'm reading. I have like 10 pages left. I was like, I gotta stop reading this. I gotta leave these 10 pages for after I record. But it's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And it's just so good. Have you read it?
I have not, but I've heard it's really good.
Oh, it is so good. It's just so different than any book I've ever read. And it's about these like childhood friends who are like video game developers. And it's just, I don't know, just the way it's told is just so beautiful. And so, I don't know, it's very captivating. The writing's very captivating. I've really, really enjoyed it. And I do recommend it. And I mean, it won like Goodreads, like best book of 2022. So I'm not coming here with any new info, but it's my perk of the week because I've been like waiting to get it in from the library basically. And finally reading it, it's just really good.
That's always good too, especially when you're like anticipating it to be a good book, and it is, because like sometimes, especially those like, oh, I won all these awards, and then you read it and you're like, I mean, it was okay, or like this
especially
sucks, so.
Book Talk. Book Talk has been betraying me so much recently. That's my perk of the week, and also I do want to tell everyone, please go watch Ultimatum Queer Love and talk to me about it because I got a lot to say. Everyone should go watch it. It's fucking batshit. Tiffany and I have been talking about it like all week.
It's so funny.
Please, if you've watched it, please talk to me about it. Thank you. Anyway, Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that last night my husband made some homemade hibachi, like on the Blackstone outside that I'm pretty sure I talked about several times now because we use it all the time. But did a full on like. His mom asked if he was going to do the smoke, and then he's like, no, I'm not there yet. Yeah.
The onion volcano.
I told him he's got to practice it because we got to have a show next time. But like, it was honestly delicious. Like, I mean, he did the zucchini, the mushrooms, the broccoli, just literally we did chicken, steak, and shrimp. I mean, everything. It was, every single thing was just perfection. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just not going to take out hibachi anymore, and you're just gonna have to make it for me like once a week. So he's like, okay, plan.
Did you try any of the steak?
I did not.
I'm still trying to get you to. You can't base it off the one Taco Bell beef taco. Okay, I'm working on you.
Maybe we'll get there. But everything else was just perfection. That is literally what I've eaten for the last 3 meals of my life. I had it for dinner last night and lunch and dinner today. Because we also were expecting to have more people here than we did have. So we have a lot more leftovers than we expected to have, which always happens no matter.
To you every time. I was about to say, you're always like, I'm eating this for the next week.
Yes, exactly. Even if the exact number of people that we expect to show up, even if more people than we expect to show up, we still make too much food and eat it for the next damn week. But
yeah.
Anyway, I was going to invite you over, but I knew you were busy. So
a little bit.
But yeah, that is my perk of the week. That will probably be my lunch tomorrow as well. Maybe dinner, but I think we should be finished at that point. My daughter also loves it and has demolished every single bite of every plate she's had. So that helps us go through the leftovers more quickly too.
Yeah, so definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think we have hopefully made it through this episode without losing power, without everything, without us blowing away.
Yes. There was some major lightning.
Yeah.
Did you see that when I was pointing and then the lightning happened?
Do it again.
Did you see it?
Not again. I did see it, but
that was impressive.
We need to save that clip, and we'll
get that clip.
Oh boy. Yeah. So if you want to tell us about your hibachi adventures, if you want to tell us about the books you're reading, if you're watching that show that Courtney just said that I already forgot what it was called,
Ultimatum Queer Love.
Yes. Tell us about your storms. If you guys know the drill.
Your thoughts on this case
anymore. Oh yeah, that too. Guys, it's late. I'm tired. It's been quite the week. Yes, let us know what you think about this case. If you guys are familiar with this case, it's like a fairly popular one, but not like super popular. So
I feel like if you're in the true crime community, you know about it. But if you're not, I don't feel like you do. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I feel like it's one of those, like,
For sure. So yeah, let us know. All of our social handles and contact info is in the show notes. And we are also on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes, where you can get bonus episodes and stickers and pins. And we got some videos. We got like hangouts and random gifts and just all kinds of cool stuff over there. So definitely check us out and see if there's anything that tickles your fancy that makes you want to come join us.
tickles your fancy. That's my favorite. You could also give us 5 stars on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen, and subscribe and like on YouTube. That would be great. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.